it's Andrea from Happy Cloud Creations. I just wanted to film a quick video to go over my new friendship pot holder pattern. This pattern was inspired by the best friend friendship necklaces. When I was a child, you'd have two halves of a heart that go together and you'd give one to your friend and keep one for yourself so you can remember each other by. I know right now we're just not being able to see our friends and family as much as we would like because we all have to be in quarantine and stay away from each other. So I thought this would be a fun small project that people can make. Keep one of the heart pot holders for themselves and give the other one to their friend. And it'd be just a loving gesture. So first, I know my colors are a little off. My printer ran out of ink this morning, so disregard the colors on my pattern. But so the first page will basically give you basic instructions. We're going to want to use a 1/4 inch scant seam. When you're doing quilting, you mostly want to do a 1/4 inch scant seam. So all my patterns use a 1/4 inch scant seam, which is just slightly smaller than a 1/4 inch on a ruler. It's just a 1/4 inch including the width of your needle, the width of your thread, so that when you fold open your blocks, that little fabric that's getting eaten up by that thread, it'll equal out correctly. And right here we give a little test to make sure you're using that 1/4 inch scant. If you're not, your blocks both halves might not line up correctly since both halves of the block are slightly different. Fabric requirements. So right here, it basically gives you what you need to make 2 blocks, the mirrored blocks. This right here is what I use, the 6 different colors. You could use 2 main colors in a background fabric. You could use 6, you could use 5, you could use 4, you could use 10, as many as you want to fit in there, possibly. What I like to do is draw out, the last page is a coloring page. This will help you determine where you want to put your colors, your fabrics, what fabrics you want to use. So if you're using a solid pink here, you may not want to use that same solid pink in any of these because it's going to be right up next to it. When we're determining what colors you want for the half square triangles, you're going to need 4 squares for your half square triangles. Half of those half square triangles will go on one block, the other half will go on the second block. So these will be the colors you will use for your half square triangles. So figure out, okay, I want these, like say if you're only doing 2 main colors, you're doing red, you want to do black, red, or I don't know. 2 might not work out very well, but you can make it work. Especially if you're doing scrappy colors. So like all different colors of red. That would be really cool. Just color it out and see, okay, I need this, and this will be my half square triangles. So step 1, we're basically making our half square triangles. Get your 4 main colors and your 4 background colors. You will lay them right sides of fabric together. You can't see me. Lay them right sides of fabric together, and then I go and I take a small ruler. You can use your larger ruler, but it's easier to use a smaller ruler. You will take it from one side to another and mark your center line. I like using a hair marker because it doesn't leave ink behind. It's just the mark. Another one I like is this disappearing ink pen. You can find these at Joann's. You can also find them on Amazon. I'm sure you can find them on a lot of other quilt shops. This one, it actually, when you iron it, it reappears. So like if you did it one day and it's gone, go back and iron it and it'll reappear. But it will wash out, which is nice. So once you have your line drawn from the top to the bottom, you will then sew a 1/4 inch scant on both sides of that marked line. And this will help you create 2 half square triangles. Once those are sewn, a 1/4 inch stamp from that center line. I just use scissors. Sometimes scissors are easier because sometimes with a rotary and a ruler you can slip and ruin your half square triangles, and you don't want to do that. So you'll cut both in half, and now you'll have 2 half square triangles out of 1 combo. I like to set the seam with my iron and then finger press it open and then press it with my iron. So we have 2 that are done. So you're going to want to line this diagonal line that's on your ruler up with the diagonal line that is on your half square triangle, so that when you trim off the sides, you'll have exactly the same amount of fabric on both sides. My blade's not super sharp. I should probably replace it soon. And then you're going to want to flip it and do the exact same thing, but we're going to want to have this on the diagonal line and line this up with the 2.5 inch line and this with the 2.5 inch line. And then we have a perfect little half square triangle, which I have some of mine cut out, and we'll finish the rest later. So once we have our half square triangles all done, you're going to want to lay out all of your pieces as shown in the diagram so that you can do them randomly, just knowing that this half will be a solid heart, and then this half will be a solid heart. So what colors are you going to want to be butting up to those solid heart halves? You'll want to put in the centers, and then you will basically take each 2 squares or half square triangles and sew them together on the sides, right sides of fabric facing together, and then you will sew each of those little units together to form 2 columns. Then you'll have your your scrappy half of the heart completely done. Next, we'll be going to the solid half heart of the block. And with that, you're going to need 2 4.5 by 8.5 inch pieces. And what I like to do is, and then you're going to use 2 4.5 inch squares that are just your background color. Just place them on the bottoms. And you know this is going to be one half of the heart, this is going to be the other half of the heart. Back down in your view. And so I'm just going to take this one, since I know this is the outer side of the heart. I'm just going to take my hair marker. Hair markers are a little thicker than a pen, so you just want to make sure that it's lined up correctly so that this will fit on both corners. It can add, I think you can slightly see that. And since you're going to have this huge triangle left, I like to just measure out a 1/2 inch line from that drawn line so that when I go to sew it, I can sew this line and this line. So I'll just pin this in place. And then when I go to do the second solid half heart, you're going to go the opposite direction just because it's heart and you want them to be opposite. Going to mark that a 1/2 inch as well. You could just leave them as triangles and cut them off, but sometimes it's easier to just have a stack of half square triangles already formed, and you can like make pot holders with those. You could make all sorts of things. Just save them up, make a scrappy quilt. All right, so that one's done. The bottom sections are done. And then you're going to just place a small square, which are 2.5 by 2.5 inches, up in the center corners of your block. And you can do the same thing with these. You're going to mark them out. Boom. Mark this one out. And then pin in place. I find it easier to pin in place just so that your fabric doesn't slide around at all when you're sewing these. So when you are sewing next to your drawn lines, you're just going to want to butt your needle up right next to those drawn lines. Now it's kind of hard to see my drawn line because I use the hair marker. But you're going to want to stitch right toward the outside of that line, and same with this second line that you drew, and up here too. So you will cut a 1/4 inch from this top seam, I just use scissors. You can measure it out with a ruler and your rotary cutter if you like. I just kind of freehand it, trim it off, and then trim in between the two lines on the bottom. And then you'll have 2 half square triangles that you can use for a different project. And then I like to press the seam and then finger press these open and then press them. And then you will take another 2.5 inch square, put it at this top corner. After this one's pressed, put it at this top corner and do the same thing. Draw out your line, pin in place, and then stitch that down. So once you have all 4 of your hearts completed, 4 of your half hearts completed, you will, with right sides together, match up a scrappy with a solid and a solid with a scrappy, pin down the center. I like to match up the points, pin in place, and then sew down the center. It would have less bulk pressing toward the solid half heart. I did make one that was 2 solid halves because I had a lot of both of these fabrics and I didn't have any other fabrics to go with them, so I thought that would be cute. I like how those turned out. So next you're going to want to turn these into pot holders, or you could do placemats, or you could make 4 and make a 16-inch block, a pillow, a table runner, anything you really want. But I'm going to give you some directions for how to make it into a pot holder with binding and a loop or without binding and a loop. My previous quilt along with pot holders, I did not show the loop method in the actual directions, so I thought I would give those to you now. You're going to want to do your sandwich, your little quilt sandwich, and first off you're going to take your backing fabric. You can get away with a 9-inch square. The directions do say a 9.5-inch square. You just have a little less wiggle room. And then next you're going to put down your Insulate, which is this insulated batting. It's not, it helps you protect yourself from the heat. It's not like heat proof, it's heat resistant. Either side is okay to go up or down. There's no right or wrong side to that Insulate. And then you're going to put down a layer of cotton batting. This one's a little smaller. This one's exactly 8, but it's better to have the 9, but I cut the 8 for the other version. And I grabbed the wrong one. But so you're going to want to lay this out as best as you can on all of your layers, and then you're going to pin in place. I like to pin down the center, toward the corners, and then you have your little sandwich, which these don't go together, because this one I'm going to show you the other method, the no binding method with that one. Once you have all of your layers together and pinned together, you'll just quilt as desired. You can follow the lines, you could just do straight lines all over, you could do free motion. Then once that's quilted, you're going to trim it down to 8.5 inches, or as close as to that as you can. You're going to want to make sure not to cut your points off, so when you're measuring it, make sure you're measuring, trimming a 1/4 inch from those points. The same with the bottom point, a 1/4 inch from that point. And then we will start the binding process. So next you're going to make your binding, and basically it's a 2 3/4 inch strip. You may be able to get away with a 2.5 inch strip. I like to do a little bit larger. Sometimes I like to do a larger than a 1/4 inch seam. Sometimes I go up to a 3/8. But with this one I'm going to show you a 1/4 inch seam. So you take your strip and you just iron it lengthwise in half, and then you're going to match it up to the upper corner and just sew a 1/4 inch all the way to the end until you get about a 1/4 inch to the end. And you're going to sew it off the edge, if you can see that. Sew it off the edge. Then next you're going to take your binding strip, flip it up. This is really distracting, sorry. Flip it up. Pretty new to these YouTube videos. Then you're going to flip it down so that it's perpendicular with the side of your block. So it kind of has like a little tab. But you're going to leave that tab down, and you're going to start sewing from the tippy top 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Again, doing the same, stopping at a 1/4 inch, going off the edge on these next two corners. So corner 2 and 3. So it'll look like this when you get to the third corner. And then you're going to see, okay, I'm going to be coming up to this corner that I've already started. So before you start this side, you're going to want to wrap this all the way around. I like to kind of just pin it in place so that when you're sewing over it, it doesn't move at all. And then I will do the same with this one. And fold this one perpendicular as well. And then you're going to sew from this top to the bottom and stop here and kind of back stitch. And then I will show you what comes next. So we've sewed all the way to the edge on this one. Next you're going to flip all your corners, or all your binding strip around. You're going to take out this pin. Your strip will probably be a little longer than needed, so I like to measure that to about 7 inches, or you can just take your fingers and wrap it around and then cut like 1 inch past your fingers. But if you don't like that method, you can just measure 7 inches. Cut it down to 7 inches. And then next, you're going to take it to your iron, and you're going to press, I know it's a hard color to see, you're going to fold this raw edge in, and then you're going to fold this on top. So it covers this stitching, but it also lines up with the front side of the binding. I like to iron that in place just so it's a little firmer, or it's creased a lot better and stays put. And then I pin it in place along this edge just to keep it in place when I'm sewing it down. So then I take it to the machine once it's ironed, pressed, and then I start from this edge on the front, go all the way down, and then you just have these little strings left over, which I like to bury my threads. You could just do back and forth to kind of create a little knot, but I think it looks cleaner if you bury your thread, especially since this is an item that's going to be washed a lot since it's a pot holder. I spring my top thread back to the back so that I have two threads on one side. You can take them both to the front, but I prefer the back. Cut that off so that they are even. And get them both in the needle. And then I like to just wrap it around my needle twice. Slip it down to make a knot. So you got a little knot down there. And then, I don't know if you can see this. I like to just, you go in between the layers with your needle. Doesn't really matter where you come out at. And then you're gonna try to pop that knot in so that you don't see any loose threads on either side, which I like. And then you just kind of trim that off. Voila. Put my needle back in my little needle storage. Then we're going to take this pin out, kind of flip this open. You're going to flip it actually around to the back because when you sew this loop in, you don't want it to get caught. So you take the loop, make it look like this, match it up to the edge of the pot holder with this flap down, this on the front. I'm going to do that again just so, because it's, I know this is the hard part. So you're going to flap that open, come down like it's a loop, but then you're going to bring it in so it's kind of bent inward. And then I like to pin that in place and make sure this is flat so that that doesn't get stitched up. Pin in place, and then I'm going to go sew it a couple times back and forth just to secure it, and then I'll show you from there. So I kind of went over that a couple times just to secure it down. Then you take out your pin and you're going to want to take the binding and flap it back over, pin it down. If you want, you can pin this side down too, just so it's extra secure and where you want it to be in the end. And then I'm going to take this loop, flatten it so these two loops meet up right here. Then I pin that in place. So you see that. And then I'll flip that over and just make one little stitch from one side to the other. So I did that here. And then I'm going to bury the threads on this as well, just so you can't see those. Once I'm done burying those threads, I'll go around the back. And I'm going to hand stitch this down like I would a quilt binding. And then the binding method will be done. So our second method of making the pot holders with a loop is the non-binding method. And basically, first step you would need, the pattern shows you all the things you need for this method as well. You take your 2.5 by 7.5 inch strip of fabric. I like to first fold it in half, iron it, so that way you kind of know where the midpoint is. And then you can fold these two sides in, and then fold it over and iron it. And then I go and I stitch it close to that edge so that it's nice and flat and sewn. Then we're going to do our quilt sandwich with this one. First, you're going to put down your Insula Bright, then your backing fabric, which this is not directional, so you can really put it any way you want. Then you can take this loop you can either mark where the midpoint is. You can mark it by folding your fabric in half. Sometimes I do that. It'll give you a little crease. And you know that's the midpoint. I'm actually gonna have my pins sticking out so that way after I'm done sewing it they'll be easy to pull. If you pin it this way, it might be more difficult to pull the pins out once you're done sewing this. Okay, and then you're gonna put your top on, and then your cotton batting. So when you sew this, you're gonna sew all the way around 1/4 inch, but you're gonna want to leave about 1.5 inches to 2 inches at the bottom not sewn so that you can have a spot to flip your pot holder right side out. So I'm going to pin this up and I'm going to go sew it, and I will show you what it's going to be like after that. So I sewed the pot holder all the way around, leaving a couple, 1.5 inches, maybe a little less, open. And then you just flip it, right side out. Oh. I know it's a little difficult. So sometimes a little bit bigger hole is better. So a lot of layers in this. There's my little loop. And we're almost done. You can poke out the corners with dull scissors. I would not use sharp scissors like this to poke out the corners. Or if you have a dowel, or you could use a pen. But once you get this flat and all the corners poked out, you're going to want to, I like to iron it. And then I like to take thread and a needle and just hand stitch this bottom closed, and then go around the edges with your machine, like not even, maybe 1/4, maybe a little less than 1/4 around the edge, just so that you can get it nice and secure around the edges. So yeah, that is the non-binding method way. So we have the binding method way and the non-binding method way. I hope you guys enjoy making this pattern and either making pot holders, quilts, table toppers, table runners, placemats, pillows, anything you can think of. The options are really endless. If you have any questions, you can always email me at happycloudcreations.com. You can go visit my blog where you can download this pattern for free. And make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can be informed whenever I post a new video about quilt-alongs or new patterns or my monthly updates. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.